I remember freezing as I read the headlines in the newspaper. It said that a little boy, while camping with his family by the river, had stumbled across something unbelievable: 3 packets of deteriorated money totaling $5,800. The article detailed how this money matched the ransom asked by D.B. Cooper, the man that had turned my life and my career into a never-ending nightmare. And now, maybe, just maybe, this was the break we needed to find him after 9 years. I was back in the air, pushing the drink cart down the narrow aisle. It was just another flight, another set of passengers. Everything was ordinary except for one man. He sat in 18C, dressed sharply in a black suit that made him stand out among the casually dressed passengers. His attire was meticulously put together, complete with dark sunglasses that masked his eyes and lent him an air of mystery. His calm demeanor was unsettling. As I moved past, our eyes would occasionally meet, and each time, a chill ran down my spine. As we reached cruising altitude, the mysterious man in 18C continued to catch my eye. He seemed fixated, his gaze shifting back and forth from the window to me, a quiet intensity in those hidden eyes. Then, as the plane leveled off, he signaled me over with a poised gesture that had an undercurrent of urgency. Approaching him with a smile, I expected perhaps a request for another drink. Instead, he handed me a piece of paper with a confident, almost rehearsed smile. As I tucked the note into my pocket, I assumed it was just another attempt by a lonely businessman to pass his number to a flight attendant. Little did I know that small piece of paper was about to turn my life upside down and thrust me into the center of one of the biggest unsolved mysteries in history. As I continued my rounds, I passed by the mysterious man once more. This time, he grabbed my arm gently but firmly, pulling me closer. He leaned in and whispered, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." My heart skipped a beat. I pulled out the note with trembling hands and unfolded it, finding his calm eyes watching me read his stark claim. He calmly opened his briefcase slightly, just enough for me to glimpse the contents. Inside, neatly arranged, were what looked unmistakably like sticks of dynamite wired together. Fear gripped me as I stared at the explosive device. I was standing next to a man who could turn the aircraft into a tragedy in the blink of an eye. Time seemed to stand still as I processed the scene before me. The man in 18C, still as composed as if he were discussing the weather, laid out his demands in a calm, clear voice. He wanted $200,000 in unmarked $20 bills, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck ready to refuel the aircraft upon landing in Seattle. He planned to release all the passengers there, but instructed that the pilots must remain to fly him wherever he directed next. With a heavy heart, I nodded. I made my way to the cockpit to relay his demands to the pilots. And as I spoke to them, they listened intently, immediately understanding the severity of the threat. I returned to 18C, where the hijacker instructed me to sit next to him. "Just in case I need anything," he said, sitting beside him. The remote control to the bomb within his easy reach was terrifying. Yet he maintained his eerie calm, which somehow made the situation even more frightening. The other passengers chatted idly, read books, or dozed, blissfully unaware of the danger they were in. Their ignorance was a small mercy, but it also magnified my own terror. As the plane touched down in Seattle, the reality of our situation finally began to crystallize. The tarmac was swarming with authorities, a silent buzz of activity waiting for the aircraft to halt. Once stationary, the doors opened to reveal agents armed, not with weapons, but with briefcases filled with $200,000 in unmarked $20 bills and the 4 parachutes he had demanded. The hijacker received the items with a nod, his expression unregal behind the dark sunglasses. Then, he gave permission for everyone to be released. It was a surreal procession as the passengers disembarked, murmuring confusedly, spared from understanding the true nature of their delayed flight. Following the passengers, the crew began to disembark. My legs were shaky as I prepared to step into the aisle and make my way to freedom. I glanced back at him, the man who had commanded our flight, still eerily calm as he held the remote to the bottom. But as I turned to leave, his hand shot out, gripping my arm. "You will be staying with me," he said quietly, a firm edge to his calm voice. My heart sank, tears welled up. But I fought them back, not wanting to show my fear. As the last of my colleagues left the plane, I was alone with him, the man behind the myth, forced to assist in whatever plan he had next. The cabin felt cavernous and empty. I steeled myself, ready for what would come, as the hijacker made his final preparations. He paused at the door, the cash and parachute secured. His next command was to open the plane door and lower the stairs. I hesitated and said, "That's too dangerous. We can't do that in flight." Ignoring my concerns, he coolly replied, "All right, I'll handle it myself." As he worked the mechanism to open the door, he struggled briefly. Then he paused and turned to face me. "Take care of yourself," he said, his voice almost lost to the wind. It wasn't a taunt or a threat, but a strangely genuine farewell, tinged with a regret that seemed to age him instantly. And with a nod that felt like a silent apology, he turned back, and before I could respond, he stepped into the night, disappearing into the darkness with the cold rush of air following him out. The door slammed shut behind him, sealing off the chaos he had left behind. The plane was suddenly silent but for the sound of the engines and my own ragged breathing. He was gone, vanished into the dark, leaving behind only the echo of his deeds and a story that would puzzle the world for decades. We landed soon after, and I was ushered into the back of an FBI car. As we drove away, the shock and adrenaline that had sustained me gave way to a torrent of emotions. I cried uncontrollably, mourning the bizarre intimacy of the final exchange with a man who had terrorized a plane and then vanished into the night. In that brief final interaction, he had revealed a vulnerability that only deepened the mystery of who he was and why he had done this. I was the last person to ever see that man's face, a fact that became a pivotal element of countless investigations. On many occasions, I was accused of being an accomplice. The next year became a blur of interrogations and relentless media attention, the stress and scrutiny becoming too much to bear. Eventually, I quit my job and withdrew from everything, seeking solace in the quiet anonymity of a life less scrutinized. When the newspaper headlines surfaced, heralding the discovery of the ransom money by that unsuspecting boy, it all came rushing back. I honestly wanted him to get caught, not out of any sense of malice or desire for retribution, but out of a deep, abiding need to understand. Who was he really? And after all these years, where had he ended up? In the aftermath of the hijacking, the investigation cast a wide net with approximately 900 individuals scrutinized as potential suspects. However, among the myriad of possibilities, two stood out as particularly compelling candidates. Dwayne L. Weber was a man shrouded in mystery and contradiction. On his deathbed, he claimed to be D.B. Cooper, confessing to his wife that he was the elusive skyjacker. This confession was bolstered by a series of suspicious details. Weber had a history of military service, which might have given him the necessary skills for the hijacking. His wife later discovered a hidden stash of old identification papers and a Northwest Airlines ticket from around the time of the hijacking, adding layers to the enigma of his claim. Barbara Dayton, a transgender woman previously known as Robert Dayton, offered perhaps the most unconventional story. Known for her love of flying and expertise in explosives, Barbara's friends recounted her admitting to being the plane hijacker in a casual conversation. They described how she might have dressed as a man to carry out the hijacking, thereby blending back into society post-escape as a woman, an act that would have been the perfect disguise. Who really was D.B. Cooper? Is he still alive, blending into society and watching as the world continues to puzzle over his fate? What really happened to him after he jumped into the stormy night sky?